So this is a very busy period. So I'm going to be getting back into my schedule of doing videos. Obviously today, the video that I want to really focus on and to talk about is a foundation of how we start really and looking at the world. Really about going back for far. The world is always split into these two worlds. You know, you this party or that party or that party. You have to be left. And my view is that that's a very limited. In fact, it's a way that we never actually solve problems and solve problems. In fact, it helps those in power to continue problems. Today we're going to be discussing, summarize that and racism. We're going to discuss, and I'm going to be discussing this with the Christian in St. Lucia, and that'll be. But the conversation really is to have this very deep discussion and who's us in crisis in the world. Get our heads screwed on right, so we can actually solve problems. And that's what, as many of you know, that I'm dedicated to really helping get to the solutions. The lawyers and the lobbyists never problems. They make their existence by perpetuating problems. We'll be talking about that with Elijah. I have a conversation before just want to thank, and we have people from Minnesota. We have people from. Someone said racism is not about skin color. We'll be talking about that. Pittsburgh, British Columbia, from St. Lucia, Arizona. Canada, thank you, Sherry, Ohio, Texas, Arizona, Virginia, California, Los Angeles, Toronto, Waltham, Massachusetts. Hi, Ivan. It's Ivan, one of our local neighbors. Boston. Hi, Butch. And we have a lot of great people joining. There's people joining on. We've got some people joining in. But we really want to drill deeply and have a real deep conversation. Also, Mark Lee from but it's about we really start to actually look at how do we look at a problem beyond left or right. Of England, John Allen, people joining. That I am running for the United States Senate, and our Senate campaign is beautiful. Importantly, we brought in bosses, but we also have volunteers across the country, supporters across. So what's very important to understand is, as I walk you through our campaign site, is that our campaign has really a systems approach, which means a holistic approach to looking at the world, and so when you go, it says truth, freedom, and health. And these freedom and health, freedom are not just simply words, a systems approach to solving problems. We begin with freedom. And what freedom means is that we have to have the ability to have open discourse without censorship, which is what YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and those big platforms are doing to people. They're subverting their digital rights. But freedom, open debate, to practice, opportunity to real science, then we can get to truth. And from truth, we can identify real problems and get real solutions for the health of our own body, or our interest. From health, real health, we can be strong enough. Truth, freedom, and health. And those of you know, anyone listening in the United States, if you haven't done so, you can support our campaign. Because our campaign is not just a campaign, a U.S. campaign, it's a campaign for freedom and health. And as I've shown, Massachusetts, in many ways, is center really exists. You have and thought comes from monopoly, which is not good. Is where most through they get trained, and that's why Massachusetts is the center of the deep state, and that's why our campaign. One of the most important things when you support our campaign, my goal is money. We take people's money, like some most of the campaigns do, but to actually offer you tools, not before I get elected. One of them is a book called System and Revolution, which will give you the foundations. Anyone who's read this book, you can read it. You can read it in this book. You can read it in about 2 hours. But it's basically 50 years worth of knowledge congealed into a very powerful book that'll teach you what, and then you'll revolution. What is real change? What is real? And then in this book, by the way, anyone who donates 25 gets this. But if you can't afford that, donate whatever you can. Okay, 5 or 10. But separate from that, and in addition to that, there's a very powerful tool like Body. And by the way, those of you who are outside of the United States, you cannot donate to our federal campaign. It's not allowed. But if you want to go to, you can go there yourself. You can go to Get Started directly here. Get Started now. Those of you outside of the United States, same thing. You can get the book, and you can see the principles of System and Revolution, and teach you how to use those principles to understand what kind of system you are. Every system has the forces of transport, and if you can figure out where answer a different, help you perturb from its natural state. Figure out using the tool, your system back to you, with food, exercise, etc. This has been one of life's work, and I want to give this to you guys at a very, very reasonable, and take advantage of it. Again, if you go to Shiva for Senate, advantage of our campaign is about truth, freedom, and how systems approach to teach you those. Those of you can also volunteer for us. You simply go, and then you can sign up. If any one of you wants to get along, locations, and there are many volunteer distribution points where you can sign. Okay, on sign. Okay, everyone should be clear that I'm running for you. That I'm running U.S. Senate, not as a politician, not as a lawyer, as an entrepreneur, as a scientist. So please, campaign. It's your campaign for truth, freedom, and health. And now I've been making all these videos because the fundamental goal is I want to create lots and lots of warriors by taking this. Let me bring Elijah on. So Elijah, how are you? Someone says the sound is very good. Elijah, I think you're creating a lot of static on there. Maybe can you just mute for a second? Yeah, a lot of static out there. People out from that. Sound. How's the sound now, Pamela? I just had Elijah. There's a lot of static. There's a lot of static that you have on your end, Elijah. So I think what we'll do is when I talk, if you can mute talk, so we'll get sound all the time. Jen, are you hearing better? Jen, are you now? Better bring Jen on. Is that better?
Yeah.
The sound?
Yeah,
okay.
It's good now.
Okay, that's a technique we'll use when I talk. If you can, okay, and then you talk, get some disturbance, and we'll mute back and forth. Is that cool? Back and forth. Is that okay? You have to unmute. All right. Anyway, you run one of the leading Christian TV stations in St. Lucia. St. Lucia is in the East. I thought it was very time about racism today, coronavirus. Point when the slave trade was taking place, Africa were Caribbeans, right? There was all slave trading routes. There's slave trading routes to Africa. So, but today, I think we want to have a good conversation going beyond left and right people. As long as we have right. None of us profit. You always have people fighting each other. You never solve racism. in the previous video, there is a real part of the establishment. There's any racism, and the other part, which I call the liberal elites, racism is heard, and if you persist in affirmative, it's been going on for around 60 years, and nothing gets solved. And in my view, there is a real racism. People can go listen about it, talk about it, which is about taking people's places and using that to essentially manipulate people economically. If you're white, you must be a Klansman, right? That's Klansman, right? That's one form of racism. If you're racism, this you probably are not capable. If you're an Indian, practice yoga and meditate, you must be non-violent, and shake your head, take a beating. Chinese, every Chinese person must practice kung fu, right? And so on. So the establishment likes to put people into these, and when you try to step box, then you're beaten down. And it's a broad, large racism. So that's one thing I think we'll have a conversation about. We'll have a conversation. Talks where it's coronavirus, where it's interesting thing to talk about is there's been by the tens or by thousands talking about coronavirus anymore. We're talking about, no one is talking to contradict. Maybe we can start. Go ahead. Well, for me, it's not about belief with faith, but to me, it's about direct experience. So I talk about my experience. I was brought up, in a very, very deeply spiritual background. With my grandparents, my great grandparents, who were parents, farm. Throughout every instant was a connection to God, and the Creator, and how to pray, how to meditate, to have a direct relationship. This life, very special and very important. Every important ounce, direct experience that leads me to that. It's a personal relationship with the Creator. Yeah, keep continuing. view on this. If you look at this, first of all, you have 380 trillion viruses in your body. Okay, let's just go to stuff we know. We start getting into speculation. You're sitting here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, right? We're never going to figure out all the details. We'll get data, right? We'll get pieces of data, but we'll know going on, right? But I can tell you what we do know is that you have 380 in your body, viruses in your body, viruses. Okay, viruses constantly are mutating. Constantly trying to figure out. Viruses can be passed to another. Viruses can be passed, what they call zoonotic viruses, from an animal to a, that was original that was theory, right? Out there, right? That this went from a bat to a human being, right? You know, there's various types of viruses, right? From the SARS virus, etc. But zoonotic, that's called a zoonotic virus. And then as people were not original to find they weren't able to zero in on. If you can't And I am